Okay, call the meeting to order, please. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral, that the regular meeting of Council of the Township Springwater of January 15, 2020 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Please join me in the singing of the national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. Before we proceed, any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay, we're starting off with a public meeting session. Planning matters. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call a public meeting to order? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. That public meeting of Council held under Section 17, 21, and 34 of the Planning Act for OP 21901 and ZB 21912 by Christine Loft of Loft Planning, Inc. on behalf of Kenneth and Geraldine Rounds. Rounds Ranch be called to order at 6:32 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township. Council held in compliance with Section 17, 21, and 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to proposed amendments to the Township of Springwater Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw 5000 as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendments. Following that, an opportunity will be given to enable those who have any comments, concerns, or inquiries with regard to this proposal to make their views known to Council. In addition to any comments made at this meeting, written presentations would also be welcomed by Council. If a person or a public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a proposed official plan and or zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed official plan amendment is adopted and zoning bylaw amendments are passed, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. Any persons who wish to speak should first give their name and address. All comments and questions will be addressed through myself as chair. Oral submissions will form part of the public meeting record, including the name and address of the speaker as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the Township's website. So we're dealing with OP 21901 and ZB 21912 by Christine Croft on behalf of Kenneth and Geraldine Rounds at 1922 County Road 92, referred to as Rounds Ranch. I'll now call upon the clerk to confirm the notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 20th day of December 2019 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 10 properties in the Township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendments would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendments apply at a location that was visible from County Road 92. The notice was also placed on the Township's website.
And has the Planning Department received any correspondence in response to the notice of the public meeting?
No correspondence has been received.
Okay, I'll now call upon Ms. Christine Loft of Loft Planning, Inc. to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you just pull the microphones close to you there so that it gets caught on the recording, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Council, staff, and those in the audience. My name is Christine Loft, and I'm a planning consultant working on behalf of Ken and Geraldine Rounds. And I made the submission for the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment before you tonight. So the purpose of the OPA is to add a site-specific policy to the existing agricultural designation within the official plan. And the site-specific exception would read to permit on-farm diversified uses, including agritourism uses and ancillary uses, such as a water slide, as it applies to the subject lands. And the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment would be to permit additional on-farm diversified uses on the subject property to permit agritourism and ancillary use permissions, including a water slide. So you're all likely aware, but the property is at 1922 County Road 92 between Wasaga Beach and Elmvale. The property is just over 50 hectares in size with 750 meters of frontage on the county road. There is agriculture on the property as well as a residence and then the Rounds Ranch operation. There is on-site parking as well as private services on the property. This is just an aerial of the property. As part of the planning report, we have identified all of the structures that make up the property, including agricultural buildings, residents, as well as the structures that are related to Rounds Ranch. In terms of the area used for Rounds Ranch, of the 56 hectares, there's approximately 5 hectares of the area that's operating as Rounds Ranch. That does include the corn maze area, so some of it's certainly not all building and structures, but open area for Rounds Ranch to be used. This is the official plan. So your local official plan designates the lands as agriculture today with no site-specific exceptions on it. And this is the zoning bylaw. So there is a site-specific exception on the property now. You can see the A-33. And that 33 exception reads, permitted uses under the existing site-specific exception zone include agriculturally related uses such as petting zoos, wagon rides, farm tours, group functions, education, corporate training, as well as an accessory concession stand for the use of on-site patrons. So Ken and Geraldine did have Lloyd Hunt Architect prepare a site plan, which it's a little hard to read on the screen, but is certainly clear if you're to look at the original copy. You can see the ring road type internal laneway that has driveway access to County Road 92. It does loop around so that a fire truck or emergency vehicle could go around the road and not have to back up. There's a pond located in the northwest corner of the property, and there are 2 grassed parking areas on the property that you can clearly see on the site plan. The one of the parking areas has 324 parking spaces and the other 55 spaces. And then the additional road towards the back of the building to the agricultural structures. The county official plan also identifies the property as agriculture. No amendment is required to the county official plan. The county official plan already identifies on-farm diversified uses as being a permitted use in the agricultural designation. And so the amendment that we've applied to your local official plan is virtually the same wording as what the county plan already permits, so there would be some consistency there, as well as this definition, or the language in this definition, is also consistent with provincial policy. So we have been consistent right from provincial policy, and I would think that in time, as your official plan is updated, that regardless of this being a site-specific amendment, that your comprehensive official plan would also entail likely these same definitions as they're coming down from PPS and the county plan. So the county was part of our pre-consultation meeting with your planning staff, And they agreed that if we obviously stayed consistent with the language in the county plan, that there would be no conformity issues and that the uses proposed certainly comply. And so the local official plan then, the request is that we would add the on-farm diversified uses. So the site today does have the site-specific exception in the zoning bylaw, and the intent was to permit the water slide use, which wasn't clearly permitted in the existing exception. So the amendments that we've applied for provide for a more or a higher definition, being the on-farm diversified use, which is the language in PPS and the county plan, which is really an overarching definition to permit all sorts of agritourism type uses. I think I'll leave it at that. A couple of years ago, we were lucky in that the province came out with agricultural guidelines, which really helped, as planners, helped us understand what the province meant by agritourism type uses. And so I won't read this, it is in the planning report, but certainly if we're reviewing the types of uses that Rounds Ranch is today and future uses that would all sort of fall under that agritourism umbrella, it's certainly my opinion that we're falling under that on-farm diversified agritourism use that provincial policy permits. And the guidelines also identify a number of sort of criteria that we should review when we're looking at the agritourism type uses. And so in my opinion, these are certainly met. The bottom 5 points, that it is on a farm, that it is secondary to the agricultural use, that it's limited in area. Again, it includes the different types of uses of which we're applying for the agritourism use, and that it's compatible with the general area. And the zoning bylaw, where I've just provided the exception again, but basically the new exception that we would be applying for would be to permit those on-farm diversified uses. And I've also incorporated the definition of on-farm diversified use simply because your plan doesn't currently have that definition. So I've just included the definition within the exception. And so that's my presentation. In my opinion, the proposal does certainly conform to the county plan, and we did not require an amendment to that plan. The proposal conforms to provincial policy and the agricultural use guidelines, and that the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment as applied for are consistent with the policies, with provincial policy as well as the county plan, and generally with your own official plan. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now call upon members of the public wishing to ask questions or make comments regarding this application. Please come forward to the microphone and state your name and address. Doesn't appear like there are any of those, so I'll turn to council for any questions or comments regarding this application. Okay. Clear can be.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications and showing an interest in the matter. Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder to mover and seconder to adjourn this meeting, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore. That the public meeting of council held under sections 17, 21, and 34 of the Planning Act, OP 21901 and ZB 21912 by Christine Loft of Loft Planning, Inc. on behalf of Kenneth and Geraldine Rounds Ranch, now adjourn at 6:44 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive direction following the public meeting, please? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. The council, having held a public meeting in accordance with sections 17, 21, and 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, P13 is amended on official plan amendment application 21901 and zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 21912 by Christine Loft of Loft Planning, Inc. on behalf of Kenneth and Geraldine Rounds, Rounds Ranch, having noted the correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we move on to item 6.1, deputations and presentations. And I'll now call upon Ms. Amy Goldsworthy, our Asset Management Coordinator, for a presentation regarding the asset management.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, council, staff, and guests. Tonight I will be doing a brief presentation on asset management. We're going to look at what asset management is, the regulatory requirements, the role of council, and I'm going to provide an update on the township's asset management program as well as a overview of what we have planned for 2020. So what is asset management? Assets provide services that contribute to our quality of life. Asset management is an ongoing process that leads to safe and sustainable services delivered in a predictable, cost-effective manner and structure information used to make strategic decisions. This information is used to ensure proper function of the township's assets and to provide citizens with services. Basic information required for asset management includes the following: what do we own? Where is it located? What condition is it in? What is the level of service, current and desired, that the asset provides? What is the asset's remaining useful in service life? What assets are most critical, and what is the level of risk to their function and sustainability? What do we need to sustain services provided by each asset? What do we need to when do we need to do it by, and what is the associated cost? Asset management is not a standalone plan. Asset management plans, software, and data collection support a holistic and integrated asset management practices. Asset management is a team effort from both council and staff. Staff need to be able to provide accurate and meaningful information to allow council to make informed decisions for direction and allocation of resources, so staff may manage risk and maintain the expected level of service for residents. Regulatory requirements. Asset management is mandated for Ontario municipalities in Ontario Regulation 588/17, which is Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure, which is found under the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act. Municipalities are required to prepare a strategic asset management policy by July 1st of 2019, which is to include any of the municipality's goals, policies, and plans supported in the asset management plan. Municipalities are also required to prepare an asset management plan, which must include current and proposed levels of service for each category, including life cycle management and financial strategy. This is to be in place for core infrastructure by July 1st, 2021, and for all other infrastructure by July 1st of 2023. Your role as council is to set strategic direction. Asset management provides council with the necessary information to make informed decisions for service levels and resource allocation. For council to set direction and deliver safe and sustainable services in both a predictable and cost-effective manner, substantial information is required. This information addresses the following. For performance, what level of service does the asset currently provide? How long will the asset perform under current maintenance and operation levels? And for risk, what is the likelihood and consequence of the asset failing? Cost, what budget is required to maintain or change the current level of service that this asset provides? While council sets direction and allocates resources, it is the role of municipal staff to manage risk and maintain the expected level of service to residents. Council is also responsible for ensuring that staff are equipped with the necessary means to provide the expected level of service determined by council. So an update on the township asset management program. The township has a policy in place, which was a requirement of the regulation by July 1st of last year. There is still significant work that must be done to maintain compliance with the regulation, including updating the current asset management plan from 2014. An asset management steering committee has been established. The goal of the committee is to advance asset management within the township. We are currently in the implementation phase of asset management and work order software project. Staff across departments have been involved in data collection and analysis, along with training for the new software. It is expected that the software project will go live in May this year. the work plan for this year. As discussed, it is expected that the asset management and work order software will go live in May 2020. A soft launch of Phase 1 of the work order module is scheduled for this Friday, January 17th, for the Public Works and Recreation Parks and Facilities departments. We are focusing on collecting and evaluating core asset data. This involves data cleaning, data collection, and studies such as the 2020 road needs studies and structural assessments, which will further determine the state of local infrastructure. The asset management policy is to be reviewed and updated along with the existing asset management plan this year. Once changes have been made, the policy and plan will be brought forward to council for your approval. The current policy, approved by council in a staff report dated June 2018, along with a staff report from January 2018 detailing the regulation, will be involved in the council information package this Friday for your reference. Any questions or comments can be directed to myself, CAO Schmidt, Director Coleman, and Director Corbeil. Thank you.
Thank you. To get this on the table, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. Questions or discussion? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you and welcome. I appreciate your presentation. So you are a qualified asset coordinator, or can you just explain to me and the rest of us just what your title is there?
Okay. Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ritchie, I'm the asset management coordinator. There is no specific requirement to be an asset management coordinator.
Mayor Allen,
Yes.
in your schooling then, do you have you taken schooling for appraisal courses for buildings and that sort of thing?
Point of order, Mayor Allen?
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
I'm just curious if this is a conversation that is privy to an open, is this an identifiable individual situation? I don't know what Ms. Goldworthy's qualifications have to do with the conversation before us.
Councillor Ritchie, did you have a specific question about?
I'm just asking. I'm wanting to know if you have like in order to assess a building, what qualifications do you have in order to assess that? Is it appraisal?
I'm going to turn it over to CAO Schmidt to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie, we'd be happy to share that information with you in a private discussion. I think, the asset management coordinator position is simply to assist the municipality in being compliant with the regulation that the province has put in place. So when we advertised for the position, there were criteria that Ms. Goldsworthy was obviously the most qualified applicant. As it relates to your questions about assessing a building and that kind of stuff, that's not the qualifications of this position. That would be requested through a consultant. So a third party, we would be going out and getting that information or that expertise through a third party. So that's not what this position's expectation is. It's really to assist the municipality again in making sure that we're compliant with OREG 588-17. So hopefully that assists, but I'd be happy to have further conversation.
That's fine. I was just asking a question. I didn't know I'd strike such a nerve. I thought, how can you do the job if you don't know anything about buildings? But I'll save that for later. How's that?
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, the motion is that the presentation from Ms. Amy Goldsworthy, Asset Management Coordinator, be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Amy. Next, we have question periods. Any member of the public are invited to ask questions of council or make comments regarding an item on the agenda. Anybody who wish to come forward? Okay. Next, we are at 8.1, adoption of minutes of council. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Any of these want to be commented on or pulled? Okay, the minutes of the special meeting of council, November 25, 27, December 2, December 9, December 11, 2019, regarding the 220 budget. Minutes of special meeting of council, December 5, 2019. minutes of the special meeting of council December 18, 2019, and minutes of the regular meeting of council December 2018. All those in favor? Carried. 8.2, minutes of boards and committees. Mover and seconder to get these on the table, please. Deputy, Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. Any of these? Any comments? And these are the minutes of the library board meeting of November 2/19, minutes of the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee meeting of December 3rd, 2019. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we have item 9, correspondence and information. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Deputy Mayor Coughlin. And a seconder, Councillor Chapman. And the motion is the letter, correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. The letter from the Elmville Active Seniors Residence Request for a minister's zoning order. Discussion, comment, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, members of council and staff are apprised to a amendment that I would like to move, and in speaking with Ward Councillor Cabral for a second, we would like to add, and that the Council of the Township of Springwater hereby supports the Elmville Active Seniors Residence application for a ministerial zoning order and their comprehensive senior retirement campus proposal, and that council urge the County of Simcoe to support the application for a ministerial zoning order, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General, and MPP for Barrie, Springwater, Ormondonte, Doug Shipley, MP for Barrie, Springwater, Ormondonte, and the County of Simcoe.
And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Cabral? Discussion, comments, questions? Today, we received, and it was distributed to council, a letter of endorsement and encouragement from MP Shipley. We appreciate the group organizing this and running this, being here in attendance tonight, and all of the ongoing hard work you do. It's a fantastic project that we are behind, and I think it's moving forward very well. Any comment before we vote? All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Yes, now the main motion, we have as amended that the correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. The letter from Elmville Active Seniors Residence Re, the request for a ministerial zoning order, and that council for the Township of Springwater hereby supports the Elmville Active Seniors Residence application for a ministerial zoning order for their comprehensive seniors retirement campus proposal, and that council urge the County of Simcoe to support the application for a ministerial zoning order, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General and MPP for Barrie, Springwater, Ormondonte, Doug Shipley, MP for Barrie, Springwater, Ormondonte, and the County of Simcoe. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we turn to item 10.1, action reports. Are there any of these that we'd like? Let's mover and seconder to get them on the table. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. Any comments or questions with respect to these? 10.2 through 10.5. Councillor Hannah.
I have a question on 10.2, please.
Okay, proceed.
Through you to Director of Planning, we had a conversation earlier about the expansion period for the Simcoe soils. And my question was regard to whether the residents in the area had been notified that we were considering extending the pit allowance there, if you like, for another 3 years, given that 3 years ago, I recall when this came forward, there was some residents concerned about the truck traffic and so on. And my only question is that if we're extending it for 3 years, should we, if we haven't already, be letting the residents know that this is our consideration?
Director Coleman? Sorry, Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Hannah. Circulation was not sent out for this because it's an extension of an existing temporary use bylaw. One of the key considerations when looking at extensions is whether or not the temporary use has created any conflict or any issues with the residents that live on the street or any of the property owners in the area. And to date, we have not received any correspondence or any complaints with respect to the use, on the basis that it is a use that is conducted completely within an active aggregate operation. That said, the use is expected to continue up until the life of the existing pit ends. So there could be subsequent applications for extension. And really what this bylaw does is allow for the extension of the existing agreement between the township and the owner and the pit operator.
Further?
Thank you. My concern is that the residents would come forward and suggest that this was being done and they weren't being consulted and that council wasn't being transparent with the residents. So if we do have time to reach out to the residents, I think it would behoove this council to consider that.
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. One thing that staff can do is inform and send the notice of the decision out to the residents so that they're aware that, that this matter has come forward and was considered by council. And that would provide the required notification, I think, of the decision if there is an issue. And we can go from there.
But we're basically approving this tonight though, right? So that's after the fact.
Yes, Mayor Allen, it is after the fact. However, the public process had already gone forward. The approval for the existing use had already went through an appeal period through that application process, and based on the fact that there hasn't been any complaints regarding that use, that's primarily why there hasn't been any notice, and this is really an extension or an administrative matter where there's going to be an extension, or we're proposing or recommending extension of the agreement.
Okay. Any other items, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Spagnell. I'm just curious, at what point then does this bylaw become permanent? Why are we calling it temporary still? If we're looking at 6 years, it's been temporary for 3. Why still temporary? Thanks.
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Moore. The reason why it's temporary is because the use is intended to be a temporary use in that it will cease to exist once the pit closes. And the pit life has been slated for, I believe it's a 7 to 10 year time frame, I want to say. I think just off the top of my head, but the idea is that the pit is a temporary use and therefore the soil transfer station should also be a temporary use as well, which require these extensions every 3 years. It also, if I may add, it also provides the ability for council, if there are any issues with respect to the use, to not extend the zoning bylaw, the temporary use bylaw, if there are any issues with this particular use at those checkpoints, versus a permanent zoning which would be in place forever essentially until.
Did you still follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Director Spagnell, so if I understand you correctly, really there's no difference. So a permanent standing would be for the life of the pit, but you're saying the temporary bylaw is for the life of the pit, which is 7 to 10 years. I think it's just a little misleading using the word temporary for residents when they think maybe it's short-term versus long-term, that's all.
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Moore. It's a temporary use bylaw because the idea is that the bylaw will expire once the pit closes. If it's a permanent zoning bylaw, the actual soil transfer station would stay in operation and could stay in operation if the pit closes. So it closes when the temporary use or the use stops when the pit stops.
Okay, it's nomenclature basically. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just a little uncomfortable as us improving this extension without reaching out to the residents. This council's raised, and has staff raised a very excellent policy of keeping the residents informed And to go forward without doing that, even though we had no complaints, and I believe there's been no accidents that I'm aware of at that intersection, which was a concern 3 years ago at the Forbes Road and the Old Second with the extra traffic. Having said all that, I just would feel more comfortable if we reached out to residents before we approve this tonight.
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think, well, staff can circulate to residents regarding the extension of the use, if that's the wishes of council. The one thing that I'd like to add as well is that this, while it's a different use, it is not any different than when council has extended temporary use bylaws for second units, where there wasn't any public notification of those, and really the question was whether or not there was any complaints. It really does reflect the extension of an existing agreement, but staff is willing to send out notice if need be. The only issue that I see forming from that is that if the bylaw lapses, then in essence, the use is now non-compliant with the zoning bylaw. Because there is a time frame attached to this when the actual bylaw will cease to exist and not be in place.
So if there was notice, then what would that play out like? We'd give notice and then we'd have to bring this back forward and have the possibility for comment? Director Spagno?
Yes, Mayor Allen, that would be the outcome and potential impact of that, is that there could be residents that come and provide comments, and ultimately that reflects a delay in the temporary use, and therefore, depending on the timing, that could bring the property or bring the use out of compliance with the zoning bylaw.
Okay, I think we're going to pull this item. Did you want to make a comment before, Deputy Mayor? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Director Spagno. Is there any cost to the applicant in applying for an extension?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Marilyn. The applicant is required to pay the application fee, the regular application fee for the temporary use.
In monetarily, that is?
I
sorry.
believe for an extension, it's $1,000.
Okay,
Just because we're dealing with an agreement that's already in place.
okay. And then in the report, it states that January 4th, 2017 was the previous extension. So in my understanding, that would mean that's already expired. So at this point, the operations are operating how?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Councillor Coghlan. The question is whether or not it's expired really comes down to when the approvals come forward on the application, when the application was applied for. If, for example, the property owner had not submitted the application to extend the temporary use, then staff would look at the use as being non-compliant with the zoning bylaw, but because they're making an active application to extend, in essence, it's in consideration because we have an application to actually extend the existing bylaw.
Follow on?
Thank you, and through you to Director Spagno. So would there be anything, in your opinion, from prohibiting council this evening for providing a one-year extension, allowing the proponent to continue with business, but also allowing our council, now that it's brought to our attention, to move forward with consultation of the public to extend it anything past that temporary? The 3-year, we see that often in planning, but is there any, I don't want us to prohibit that and all of a sudden it's 3 months later and the business is not able to operate or whatever it might come to. If it's communication with residents, we're very able to reach out and quickly receive comment. We could put a deadline on that with no problem and then essentially execute an additional 2 years after that.
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. So just to clarify, provide for an extension over a certain amount of time to provide for the ability to give residents due notice, bring it back to the table, and then reconsider at a later date. So are you suggesting a modified time frame for the extension?
Deputy Mayor?
And through you, Marilyn, that is what I'm suggesting. Understanding that this business has followed the procedure that we put in forward to them. I don't want to not allocate them the opportunity to move forward, considering there has been no complaints from the public. But I do agree with members of the council, that if we're going to put another 3-year temporary on this, it behoves us to go back out to the public and just reassure ourselves that this isn't infringing on the residents.
Okay, before we continue discussion with this, and we will, any other comments with respect to items 10.3, 4, or 5? Okay, so we're voting, we have a mover and a seconder for those, that the action reports item 10.2 through 10.5 be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as presented. 10.3, site plan amendment, SP 218-003, Commuti, 2618 Floss Road 3 West. 10.4, final completion, Stone Manor East and West pumping stations. 10.5, temporary borrowing bylaw with the exception of item 10.2 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're back to 10.2. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just sitting back listening to what's been said. I'm just thinking that since they're already operating and being given leeway, because they've already submitted their application, I'm wondering it might not just be easier for council to provide an opportunity just at this stage of the game in order to provide staff the time to notify the landowners in close proximity to this, that in fact it's come up for a renewal and they're asking for an extension, rather than actually create a whole nother one for another year. Can we not just simply allow this to continue for, say, 90 days and then revisit it?
So Director Spagno, what would be the mechanics of doing that? How would we seek feedback if people were interested in giving feedback, or would it, yes?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Well, I think really what it would be is one of the regular notices that goes out informing residents, I think in this case here it's within 240 meters of the operation, of the application to extend, and then providing essentially a commenting period for residents to notify the township whether or not there's any issue with this. Barring that, I mean, really what you're into is really scheduling a full public meeting for something that has already been considered through the public process. So that's my concern. And the reason why that's my concern is because this went through a public process in 2016 where the residents raised their concerns, they were heard, there was a temporary use bylaw that was approved, and up to this point, there hasn't been any complaints or any issue with it, so the applicant and the owner could come back and say, well, why are we going to another public meeting or looking for public comment when we already went through the process and there haven't been any complaints?
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, it's kind of in respect to that, and I certainly understand where Director Spagno is coming from. And I would suggest that even though that's the case, it could just as easily be that we pass this and all of a sudden someone's phone starts ringing and people are unhappy about it. I'm not suggesting we do a full-blown one, but it's still up to council to determine whether or not this extension is granted or not granted. And I think that's based on an informed decision made by us. And I think the only way we can really get that kind of a basis for ourselves to make that decision is to find out whether or not any of the folks in that area, and it's a fairly rural area, so I don't suspect we're talking about a whole lot of people that are going to get notified, and I would just feel a little bit more comfortable, having listened to what Councillor Hanna said, that those people would at least have an opportunity to know that this extension's coming up. I'm not suggesting that they have a whole public meeting about it, but at least they'll know that it's coming up. They'll have an opportunity to at least speak to their councillor, who then may be able to, at some point, if there were some concerns about it, to bring those up at council meeting where this might come up again for approval or not to be approved. So that's what I'm kind of getting at, is just let these folks know it's coming up, put it off for a meeting or two, and then bring it back again.
Okay, can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the table, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Hannah. Okay, that the report from the senior planner regarding TU 216-2 Simcoe Soils Management dated January 15, 2020 be received. And it reads now that the applicable temporary extension bylaw be presented for approval by council. The clerk is working on possible wording that I'll read when she returns. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Director Spagnol. Often, or there has been times where our council has been asked to extend a subdivision agreement or planning development or planning approval process where we haven't gone back out to the public and we haven't sought public approval in affording the development community their extension. How would this situation be any different than one of those?
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. This is different in the sense that it works under a different aspect of the Planning Act. If you're speaking about subdivision approvals and draft plan approvals and extensions, there are specific requirements and lapsing dates established for those types of approvals. And essentially what happens in those cases is if they lapse and the applicant has not applied for it, it lapses, and they have to restart the entire process again and start from square one. In this instance here, it's really at the discretion of council. So council, I would say in this instance here, has a little bit more leeway because you're talking about a municipal zoning bylaw. Now that said, there's still compliance and there's still the need to comply with the bylaw, so there's somewhat of a concern there with respect to the extension of the bylaw, but if you're providing for a grace period, we can consider that, and there's not gonna be, I don't think bylaw enforcement is gonna go after the property owner for non-compliance if council's seeking an extension of the 90 days or providing that extension at this point, so.
All right, so I need a mover and a seconder for the proposed motion. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I'd just like to add to that response we just got from our
Yes.
Director of Planning. Back when this came 3 years ago, the public was concerned were the noise, the amount of truck traffic, and what type of soils were being brought in from, where they were bringing in from, and so on. And of course, the intersection, as I mentioned, at Forbes and Old Second with truck traffic. I believe that that time, the feeling when the residents left here was that this wasn't going to be permanent, it was just for 3 years. And as I said earlier, with us extending this for another 3 years, I feel it behooves us to go back to them and say, this is what the plan is. Well, there's not been any problems, give them the opportunity to come forward and not undermine I think the pretty good reputation this council and staff have.
So I take it you're moving this, Councillor Hannah? Yes, sir. Seconder? Councillor Cabral? And the reading that we have thus far is that the motion now before council be referred back to staff to provide notice of the application for extension to area residents within 240 meters, and that the temporary use be authorized to continue for the next 90 days to allow for public notice. Okay? All those in favor? That's carried. Need motion. Okay. Okay, next Next, we move to 11.1, information reports. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. We have reports 1 through 4. Any discussion on these? Questions? Okay, the reports are minor variance application, A24-19 V Gribic, 162 Trail Boulevard. Second is consent application B32 to 3419, Re-1315076 Ontario Limited, Part Block 61 of Plan 51M 837 in Apto Glen Estates, and Part 1 RP 51R 36850. Number 3 is a consent application B29 to 3119, Re-1820876 Ontario Limited, lots 8 and 9 of Plan 51M-995, and the fourth and final is a minor variance application, A25/19 of S. Fahili on behalf of T and K Iveson, 2220 South Ore Lake Road. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we move on to verbal reports. Director Spagnell, official plan and economic development. Any update, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Following the Section 26 meeting that occurred regarding the official plan review in December, staff will be bringing a report forward to council in February, seeking endorsement for the second phase, or the initiation of the second phase of the official plan review process, which will entail the preparation of background studies as recommended within the discussion paper. Also, as part of that report, it will go over the discussion paper and address how the discussion paper addresses the comments and the questions that were raised through the Section 26 meeting. So council will be seeing that on an agenda in February. And I do not have anything to report regarding, with respect to economic development at this point in time.
Thank you, Director Spagnell. Moving on to county updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. Yesterday's meeting, it was, I guess, a good news meeting. It was primarily donations and funding through ambulance services, and the other one, there was 2. My goodness, I did make notes. Aside from that, there was also County Council approved the recommendation of the regional review on the service delivery standpoint. The recommendation was to 3 of which would be hired outsourcing consultants, regional fire, conservation authorities, planning authorities, just taking a look at the services at the levels which were suggested through the regional governance review. So knowing that the county council is still heard what the province and what residents are saying, and still considering moving forward with areas of efficiency. So still taking a look at that. So that should commence shortly.
Thank you. Any municipal updates? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just want to let you know that Minnesota Mini Fest is fast approaching. It is Friday, February 7th and 8th. There's details on our Facebook page. Bowling, euchre, pancake breakfast, parade, a speakeasy, magician, and a dance to follow. Bowling is fully booked, which is great. And our theme this year is the Roaring 20s for 2020. Thanks.
Excellent. Any other municipal updates? Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor Allen, I don't have an update, but I'd like you to give this council an update as to the charges that was laid against you last year. And all I'm asking you for is an update.
My apologies, point of order. Again, that is identifiable and personal. I don't see it to be proper at the table this evening.
Yes.
I'm just asking for an update. I read it in the papers. I read it all over. I'm just wanting to know what's going on.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking,
Well, then
Mayor Allen.
You come and talk to me then, personally. Okay, next we have Councillor Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Allen. I don't know how to go about this. I do have a question for Director Spagnol. It's just a question in general, but it's something that I've noticed is affecting a lot of the mapping that's coming through for us in regards to Google Maps more than what we have here, but it appears that Google Maps puts a lot of these locations that we have at a different location.
Can you
I'm-
talk to him about it offline, Director?
Yeah, I could do that.
Yep. Okay, moving on to 13, notices of motion. Any notice of motion? Okay, item 14, items for future consideration. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to, I guess, Councillor Cabral, this could be a time where if it's an initiative by council or something through our documentation as a request of staff, items for review, if it,
This is what I'm talking about. It's an issue probably more with Google Maps than it is with Township, but it affects a lot of things that we do that the public then would go look at Google Maps at. So I'll talk to Director Spagnol afterwards.
I'm interested.
Thank you. Moving on to 15, bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of bylaws? Councillor Hanna and Councillor Moore. Question.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that 15.5, which is the Simcoe Soils Management, is not included in these bylaws?
Yes,
Just so we
it is.
didn't make a mistake.
Yep.
I knew you would catch it, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. That the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 22001 temporary borrowing bylaw, 22002 interim tax levy bylaw, 22003 final acceptance of Stone Manor sewage pump stations east and west, and 5302 TU 216-002 Simcoe Soils Management Corp. extension as amended to reflect a 90-day extension. All those in favor? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw, mover and seconder, Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman, that the bylaw 220-004 to confirm and adopt the proceeding of council at the regular meeting held on January 15, 2020 listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And adjournment motion, mover and seconder, Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:28 p.m. to meet again in a regular meeting on February 5, 2020, 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers at Min Center, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for attending.